Hello and welcome to the Iran Talks podcast. I'm here with you, Sarbaz Ruhollah Rizvi from the city of Qom in Iran, and today's 8th of January 2026. Has the quick operation by American Delta Force in Caracas and kidnapping the President Maduro shifted the global balance? Is it all about the Venezuelan oil, or United States of America is concerned about the influence of world powers in East, Russia and China in the Western Hemisphere, and how the events of Venezuela may be connected to the Iran and the events that's going on inside Iran and the dynamics between the Israeli regime and also Iran. Joining me today is the political analyst Ehsan Safarnejad from Shiraz, if I'm not wrong, Ehsan, and the geopolitical expert Carl Zaha. Thank you, gentlemen, for accepting the Iran Talks invitation and being with us.
Thanks for inviting.
Okay, let me start with Carl, and let's start with a short video from Trump. Let's play this video, and let's start with the Venezuelan case, and we'll talk about that more. Guys may play the video of Trump, and then we will have Carl Zaha about his comments about the question I'm going to ask.
You know, people are saying it goes down with one of the most incredible. It was so complex. 152 airplanes, many. Talk about boots on the ground. We had a lot of boots on the ground. But it was amazing. And think of it, nobody was killed. And on the other side, a lot of people were killed. Unfortunately, I say that, soldiers. Cubans, mostly Cubans, but many killed. And they knew we were coming, and they were protected, and our guys weren't. You know, our guys are jumping out of helicopters, and they're not protected, and they were. But it was so brilliant. The electricity for almost the entire country was, boom, turned on. That's when they knew there was a problem. There was no electricity. Caracas, there's no electricity. It's not the only people with lights were the people that had candles.
Carl, Trump is actually mocking an illegal act of aggression against sovereign nation such as Venezuela. But meanwhile, he's giving some clues about how this operation, actually took place. How did they manage to kidnap President Maduro? And still the big question remains, what exactly took place? Was it all about Delta Force performing a professional special operation, or there were some, inside job also, some problems from within the security, because he's mentioning also the Cubans, and we have, based on the reports, dozens of Cuban security forces who have been killed in this aggression. What's your analysis? What's your scenario for how all this took place without any sort of considerable confrontation between the Venezuelan armed forces and the American aggression forces?
Well, this is very Trump type operation. And this is the type of operation Trump really wanted, because this is very flashy. Trump can, boast about the superiority of U.S. special forces. But what did it actually accomplish? Well, they did kidnap the president of Venezuela, Maduro, but there is no regime change. The vice president just took over as the acting president of Venezuela. The same government people are still in power. This is just like, the U.S. has a hate boner for Venezuela for a long time, ever since the day of Hugo Chavez. But when Hugo Chavez passed away, the baton was passed to Maduro. The whole Chavismo movement is not based on one man. It's a whole organization. Now the entire organization is still intact with the absence of Maduro. So U.S. actually have not effect a regime change in Venezuela. But this is type of the operation actually reminds me of the U.S. strike on Iran's nuclear facility. As we know, it was an intentional glancing blow, so Trump himself can claim victory and then go home. And I think this is what this operation is. It's actually for Trump to be able to flex in front of the world stage that he can do whatever he wants, kidnapping a leader of a sovereign nation. But this allows him without having to deploy boots on the ground, right? This is just an escalation of his intimidation tactic toward the country of Venezuela, as he's threatened the current acting president of Venezuela. If you don't do what I say, we will nab you too. But fundamentally, the governing structure in Venezuela is still intact. Nothing has really changed, but this allows Trump to do a photo op and claim victory. Now, of course, there's a lot of questions about how this operation went down, because we saw a lot of videos of these very low-flying U.S. helicopters coming in over the sky of Venezuelan capital Caracas. The question is why is it mostly Cuban security guard for Maduro that was killed? Why there were more robust response from the Venezuelan military? Well, Trump claimed that they have silenced the air defense system, but you don't need a sophisticated radar system when you have these low-flying helicopters that you can see with naked eye. And when we know Venezuela is in possession of over 5,000 Russian-made Manpad, those shoulder-fire missiles, those will be ideal for shooting down those helicopters. The question is why we haven't seen, any helicopter being down. It's not.
Don't you have any answer to that question?
Sorry, did you ask me?
No. Call. I mean, you yourself. Do you have any answer to that question? Because as you say, it's really strange. We have just one video of one rocket being fired, nothing else.
I mean, I can make some educated guesses. I mean, we can either take what the Trump statement at their words value. U.S. was super awesome. They were able to completely knock out Venezuelan air defense with no problem. And somehow the U.S. commander were so bold that they knew they will be completely safe for their operation, for their helicopter to fly so low over the sky of Venezuela that even civilians were making videos of these helicopters fly over and posting on social media. I mean, we cannot exclude the possibilities there were some there were some bribe have changed place, that some people might have been bought off. So this is why it looks like this Venezuelan military has stood down during the whole operation. Because if you look at their targets, yes, the air defense system were targeted, but most of the other Venezuelan military bases were left intact. And they were claiming they were bombing places like Venezuelan Hugo Chavez Mausoleum or the Parliament building, which is completely, it's completely symbolic bombing, just so U.S. Americans can boast about it. But these do not degrade actual Venezuelan resistance on the ground. Yeah. So I would not exclude the possibility that there were some people were bought off. This is why we saw minimum resistance.
Ehsan, Carl mentions that we do not have a regime change, but some think otherwise. They say that this is not a normal special operation, because special operation may take place in different ways. It may have different targets. Sometimes this is a sabotage. A special unit is going abroad and doing like destroying a plant, destroying a military base and returning back. We are not talking about that sort of special operations by data force. We are talking about kidnapping the president. So when you kidnap the president and you do it without any considerable resistance from Venezuela, this means there is going to be a major change in that regime and in that system. So although it may not look like an official regime change, but actually we are facing a regime change. This is one analysis. I wonder how your understanding and your analysis on this. Is Venezuela the same regime as it was before during the Maduro, or we are now facing a new Venezuela?
Look, there is more to this story, and I think that people should control their emotion and refrain from saying anything concretely. On the grand strategy level, United States behavior is understandable. They are seeing United States declining, and they are now trying to use their power in order to maintain their hegemony, right? So on the grand scale level, it's completely understandable. From the statements by Marco Rubio a couple of years, he said that if United States loses dollar as the world's reserve currency, we're going to be in so much trouble. Similar statements were made by Donald Trump. J.D. Vance is supposedly a very big economy-focused guy. So on the grand strategy level, this makes sense. On the tactical level, the way that the operation was carried out was also good. Now, we are talking about this level in between on the operational level, what United States seeks to do and what future plan does it have for Venezuela. I was in a Twitter space when the whole episode was unfolding, and some people were saying, oh, Venezuela is done. So I played the devil's advocate, and I said that, no, I don't think that would be the case. And basically my argument was similar to your esteemed guest here. But now I find myself on the other side, and again I have to also, for the second time, play the devil's advocate, and I should say that it's arguable that United States behavior, and let me first open up a parenthesis here, from the behavior of someone like Stephen Miller, the way that he said, I think it was in an interview with Jake Tapper, he said, oh, damn straight we did go to Venezuela and we kidnapped their leader. So this is a very childlike behavior, and the entire Trump administration is basically filled with a bunch of basically adult-like children. So yes, it is very possible, very much possible for them to miscalculate and not have any other plan. But there is also this argument which can be made that if you change the head of the state, yes, for the first few days, people will be emotional, the resistance will be at its all-time high, but then after a while, you go back to status quo, and people will forget. The thing about emotion is that it starts to subside, and logic will take over. And in that sense, having that experience will undoubtedly shape the future behavior by the Venezuelan government. So it can actually be justified, because had Trump went on full on 100% using every capability that United States has and entered Venezuela, it would have created a big problem, because then, immediately in the escalation ladder, you would go from 0 to 100%, and then the resistance would be at its most steadfast mentality, or in a resilience mode. So still, what I want to say here is that the jury is still out there for Venezuela. Obviously, what remains to be seen is how other actors, such as Russia, China, Iran, will behave, and how will you...
Okay, we may have lost the connection with Ehsan. Guys, you may reconnect Ehsan. But Carl, there is one point Ehsan also mentioned. He said it's all dependent on the reaction of other powers. It's dependent on how Russia is going to react and how China is going to react, and also Iran, how Iran is going to play in this new era. But so many believe that we did not get a powerful rejection from the Russian side. Of course, Russia condemned the act of kidnapping and the aggression that United States did, but the tune was not that much powerful. And we have also China. And is China and Russia, or China and Russia are going to react in a strict way, or they are going to take it lenient? And how do you analyze the signals? We had this issue of the oil tanker yesterday, exactly same time the news came, and it was seized by the Americans. It was again kidnapped by the Americans. The Russian oil, the Russian oil was. There were some reports even that they were claiming that this took place by the signals from new administration in Caracas. How do you analyze the role that Russia, and of course after that China, they are playing in this new era? I can't hear your voice. If there may be a technical issue.
I muted myself. I forgot to unmute myself. Well, first, we need to look at two things. One is intention and one is capability. Well, of course, both Russia and China are not happy to see what happened to Venezuela, because Venezuela is a partner, is a friend. There's a lot of investment in Venezuela, and of course, this is why both countries have condemned this kidnapping. Now we have to look at capability. Currently, Russia is still deeply embroiled in Ukraine conflict. That remains top priority for Russia. For China, China still lacks the power projection that U.S. Navy has. You know, there's no Chinese base, naval base anywhere in South America or in Cuba or Venezuela. And South American continent is one of the farthest place on earth, distance-wise, from China. In fact, China can reach United States first before it gets to Venezuela. So China will have great difficulty, even if he wants to project power into the Caribbean. There's something called the tyranny of distances. The whole Pacific Ocean is just way too wide, or going the other direction, China will have to go through Indian Ocean, around the Cape of Africa into Atlantic, and then sail into Caribbean. The distance is just too far. Traditionally what Russia and China have done is to sell weapons to Venezuela. Right? Compared to the other Latin American countries, compared to other countries in the neighborhood, Venezuela is actually pretty well armed. But I have to say the performance of the Venezuelan military during the whole kidnapping ordeal has been less than satisfactory. You know, like even with all the weapons in their possession, the Venezuelan military may not have the capability to go head-to-head, toe-to-toe with the U.S. military. But this is about keeping a bunch of low-flying Vietnam-era helicopters from landing in Venezuela to grab a high-value target who happened to be the president of their country. I mean, even Somalian warlords were able to take down Black Hawks in Mogadishu, you know, back in the early 1990s. I mean, Venezuelan military has much more powerful arsenals than the warlords of Somalia. So there's not much China and Russia can do actually at this point, you know, short of deploying their own troops on the ground and manning the air defense. But that is unrealistic. I don't think either countries are at that point yet. So a lot is also depending on what is happening in Venezuela. You know, as your guest Ehsan mentioned, it remain to be seen. Has there been a deal work out between the Venezuelan government with the United States? Or is this the same government that was left behind by Maduro? I mean, there's a lot of questions to be answered. We don't have all the clarity right now. We just have to wait and see. We have to wait and see whether U.S. oil majors do come back to Venezuela and take control of the Venezuelan oil field. That's the proof in the pudding. Then we know for sure. Okay, yeah, this is a completely regime change.
At least the American narrative and what Trump says shows that, because Trump just yesterday or the day before tweeted that they have come across an agreement with the new administration in Venezuela for getting their oil, like if I'm not wrong, 30 to 50 million barrels or something like that. He mentioned, Ehsan, we lost you. You may complete your words. And also, you answer to this question that about the role that Russia played, because Carl mentioned that intention is something, capability is something else. Do Russia and China have that intention to stop the American aggressions and their policies, or are they capable? There are two different questions. But the question here is that some believe that there is an agreement, a hidden behind the curtain agreement between Russia and United States of America, that if USA is going to follow the Monroe doctrine in Western Hemisphere, so why not Russia take control of Ukraine as the area that should be under the influence of the Russians? So you give up the Venezuela, and we will give up the Ukrainian support. So something of that sort, some believe, has taken place behind the curtain. Your take on that, Ehsan?
Well, I'm first gonna finish what I was going to say, because I think that it would be a good segue for your questions.
Yep.
What I wanted to continue on saying is that, you know, there's an argument to be made that periodic time frames in which United States would attack Venezuela would actually work better for the overall pursuit of the grand strategy which I laid out. You talked about both Russia and China, and Mr. Zohar was very eloquent and very on point about the challenges that are there. But it's something more than that. It's the basis of the problem lies in the mentality of the leaders in global South and in East. Look, we oftentimes don't understand the importance of optics. United States famously has Hollywood, in which it tries to project its power. But we are way too nonchalant about the optics of the situation. The problem is that, we don't stand back and think for a moment, how would a person in Africa would react to the current development after the fall of Syria? I was thinking, how should I talk about Venezuela? Because there were all these geopolitical analysts who had the same position as I have with regards to multipolarity and its importance. And they were making phrases and statements like, yeah, Russia will never allow Syria to fall because they have the port of Tartus there. And lo and behold, you saw President Putin welcoming Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani, the head of Al-Qaeda, sooner than in Kremlin, sooner than Trump welcomed him in the Oval Office, right? And then you have Venezuela. And yes, there are these arguments to be made on an intellectual level, but certain people are not really interested to go any deep into the analysis of the entire episode. What they see is that you guys come here, talk about multipolarity, talk about the change in power, and you're advocating how we should go and work with BRICS countries, right? And in that sense, we are very interested to do that. But then something like this happens to Venezuela, something like that happens to Syria. Where is your multipolarity, and how does it? And when they ask that question, they don't mean for you to give them a formal definition. They look for tangible evidence. And that's the problem. It's more so the problem with the mentality and mindset in our hemisphere, in our bloc, that even the rhetoric. You hear the geopolitical analysts talking about, oh, Europe is a vassal state. Why do you care about the rhetoric? Why do you care if they are vassal state? As a bloc, when you look at the way that they pursue their objectives, they're in complete unison. Yes, the orders come from Washington, but there is this undeniable fact and this undeniable truth that they are very, very much in a very strong alliance with each other, and they pursue their objectives very strongly. But just to go back and, just give a short answer about, is this the problem with capability or not? To a certain extent, it is. Look, United States has 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. China has done a very good job of trying to close the gap, but still, they are trying to build that force. They have understood what the problem is. They have done a phenomenal job of pinpointing the exact weak point, and they are addressing that. But they are still way behind. It is like when I always say, in 1979 we carried out a revolution in Iran. A few years before that, Russia actually sent its first satellite to the space, Sputnik. So they have this head start. We're talking about both United States, Russia, China. They have a head start over us. Similar thing is true with regards to United States and China and Russia. When you look at J-20, it's a phenomenal fighter jet. But guess what? The first flight of F-35 was carried out in 2008, 2006, right? So there is that head start. And what I'm trying to say here is that I think that people should really stop going into these conspiracy theories. There is an argument to be made that we are not quite at the level of the advancement that we want to be in order to address, something that is happening in the backyard of United States, right? It is very close to United States. The state of Venezuela is right on the border in a way, right? I mean, if you consider the coast, the Gulf of Mexico. I don't think that in the global South there is this preparedness to start confronting United States when it's so close to its mainland with regards to logistics. Everything is 10 times worse for us than for United States.
Yeah, I accept that. I mean, there is that gap, and let's not forget that gap. But on the other side, we are not talking about individually confronting the U.S. policies. What if the countries in the East are going to united and have much more coordinated policies to each other? Like, for example, about the trigger mechanism in JCPOA, we observed a very good cooperation between Iran, China, and Russia that actually made that mechanism useless for the Americans to put more pressure on Iran. So that is the point. Isn't it possible that the Russians, Chinese, Iranians, I don't know, other countries, possibly other countries that may have that interest also to get united more? Because at the end, next may not be the Iran, next may be China, next may be the Taiwan, next may be any other country, any other interest of these countries. What's your take on that? Carl? It's mute.
Yeah, I muted myself again. So Ehsan brought about the case of Syria. I think that we can see there's some analogy can be drew from that, because Russia did militarily intervene in the Syrian war in 2015. And in fact, for a while, Russia managed to turn the tide. But then what happened with the collapse of the Syrian government is that now we know that a lot of the top echelon of the military leadership got bought off, and they have ordered their troops to stand down, and that caused the rapid advance of the Al-Qaeda forces and their march on Damascus. So again, there's not much Russia or China could do in that case if the people involved refuse to fight. I mean, that's the difference between, say, Syria versus, say, Yemen. Yemen, they put up a good fight and they forced the U.S. Navy to withdraw because, in the end of the day, U.S. behaves as a bully. If you stand up bully, the bully will back down because they don't like their nose be bloodies. And U.S. do not like to take casualties. They almost lost several advanced aircraft due to Yemeni drones and missile attacks. Now, Venezuela actually is in terms of military hardware, they actually have much better hardware than Yemen. But it comes down to the will to fight, right? You can't. There's only so much Russia and China can do if the people who are in possession of those weapons can use them effectively for whatever reasons. And I already mentioned Russia and China. They do have this realistic problem of tyranny of distances. It's quite far. And I don't put too much stock on some kind of secret deal between Russia and United States to say, okay, we stay out of Venezuela and you get Ukraine, because if that were true, then U.S. Navy wouldn't have chased down the Bella 1, which has flagged itself as Russian tanker, and Russian government specifically sent a missive to U.S. government, said, hey, this ship, we confirm this ship is now in the Russian registry. There are now a Russian flagship called Marinera. Please don't give them trouble. Yet, despite all that, U.S. Navy chased them. That ship was way outside of Venezuelan water when they got chased down by the U.S. Navy. They already left Caribbean. They were heading through Atlantic, probably heading to ports in Russia. They were chased down in the middle of the Atlantic by the U.S. Navy in cooperation with the naval intelligence from UK. So if U.S. and Russia had some kind of secret backroom deal, that's totally unnecessary. They didn't have to chase down a Russian flag tanker that was already leaving Venezuela. And so I don't put too much stock on some kind of conspiracy theory of like the three powers, Russia, China, and United States, are secretly dividing up the world into sphere of influence. That may be what United States want. I mean, that, in fact, that's what Trump often, telegraphing that. But that's not necessarily what China and Russia want. But I'm just pointing out, in realistic terms, there's not much China or Russia could do to stop a U.S. military aggression in the Caribbean, just for pure logistic reasons.
Yep. Let's shift to the case of Iran. I request the respective viewers, to like the video and also to subscribe to the channel. We are collaborating the video from a channel called Zaha, and also the Iran Talks podcast, irantalks.podcast channel. So my request is that subscribe the channel and also like the video so that we can get more views. Let's shift to Iran. Ehsan, we had in news that America is, sending its special Delta Force to Iraq, Erbil in Iraq. So some again come with this idea that another scenario, such as the scenario of Caracas, is going to take place against Tehran. Some others say that no. If you look back to the actions of the Americans and also the Israelis during the last couple of years, in each operation they're trying to come up with a new tactic that is not such as before. Like once they use the pager attack, once they use for example, direct attack on the head of Hezbollah in Lebanon, once they use midnight attack on Iranian military commanders. So each time they're coming with something new. Is Iran next from your perspective, or the developments in Venezuela has nothing to do with Iran?
Well, they have been trying to do everything that they can in order to stop the Iranian government and overthrow what they call regime. But you see each of the American politicians who advocated for that policy to go through different unfortunate phases in their life, like John McCain, who was singing, one day he was singing bomb, 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 bomb Iran, and then he actually kicked the bucket sooner than he could see the overthrow of the Iranian government. So that's the first thing. But when people mention what happened in Venezuela, I'd like to remind them that United States and Israel already tried to do that. Exactly what happened in Venezuela in Iran during the 12-day war. Actually, there were dual citizens who came to Iran, and they were acting as the sort of fifth column, preparing the logistics from this side, and they had already built containers necessary to transfer these individuals out of the individuals that they want to kidnap out of the country, preparing the logistics, including the communication device, everything. And their efforts were thwarted by the Iranian intelligence. So they have already used that in Iran, and it didn't work. What happened in Iran during the 12-day war is so misunderstood by everyone in the world, that we need to talk about it like 2 hours. So I'm not going to go in there, but just so that I would.
But in a couple of minutes, Ehsan, elaborate that, short in capsule wise, elaborate that for those who are for the first time listening to your words.
Okay, so first of all, let me go and give you guys a flashback. In 2008, when the United States tried to carry out a coup d'etat in Iraq, colored revolution under the banner of the Green Movement, Iran was able to actually penetrate the network of CIA saboteurs/spies in the country. And once Iran understood the mechanism, Iranian intelligence actually gave the manifesto to both Russia and China, and they were able to crack down on the CIA cells inside their own country. So this is the Iranian intelligence service that we're talking about. Some people think that, the entire country is filled with spies and saboteurs. It's due to the fact that their perception is due to the fact that they don't understand how many different ploys and tactics were used inside Iran. You have the decapitulation strike. I'm certain that there were psychiatrists and psychologists in CIA working in order to create certain scenes and imagery inside Iran. When you see the Israeli Air Force carrying out an operation on the Iranian state TV, and they try to, why would they do that? They try to create this image that, look, the Iranian television has now stopped broadcasting. Put yourself in the shoes of Iranians who are sitting on their couch and they are watching this empty seat with rubbles falling on the table of the host, and they're seeing what is happening, and there is this empty seat for like 15 minutes, 30 minutes. That's the psychological aspect of it. They also did a very good job of creating all these warehouses in different parts of the country, and they didn't import stuff. They came up with these recipes in order to create explosives inside those workshops using very basically everyday materials that you can find, and using CNC devices, 3D printers in order to create very small drones. I oftentimes use the term micro-aerial vehicle, and carry out an extensive swarm attack on the Iranian air defense systems. I always say the Iranian air defense system is oftentimes downplayed by many people who lack knowledge in the military aspect. But once you understand that this is similar to what happened in Russia when SBU carried out an attack on the Russian strategic bombers. And then, but this time what happened in Iran was on a much grander scale. So that was another aspect of it, carrying out an enemy suppression of enemy air defense systems extensively, using very expensive air-launched ballistic missiles over the horizon, standoff missiles that they used in order to carry out attack. So, and they again carried out a very successful decapitation strikes using the AI systems like Lavender, Gospel, Where is Daddy? And these systems can be used against the other countries. And then you have this system who goes through all this and then retaliates less than 48 hours. They have used many ploys against us. Again, what the simplest one was the Spec Ops, Black Ops operation that they carried out in Venezuela to kidnap, the Venezuelan president, and that was the least of the worries of the Iranian intelligence and in the Iranian security apparatus in general. So, what they want to do, I'm more in favor of the explanation that people give, that United States and Israel understand their shortcomings and they try to deploy new tactics, which is why currently, with regards to the protest, you see protests happening in the cities that had very strong, missile cities, as we call them. So, for example, this very ordinary city of Kangan, which you can live as an Iranian and you can die living a full life without ever hearing the name of the city of Kangan. But now it's in the news. Why? Because it has a very strong military base that performed splendidly during the U.S. attack and, what's it called? The Israeli attack, not U.S. attack, on Iran. So they keep using new strategies, and there are a few tricks that they still have up their sleeves which they can use against Iran.
Okay, we will touch the Iranian unrest as well. Carl, you as someone who's observing the events from outside, the same day that Netanyahu is visiting and meeting with Donald Trump in the United States of America is the day that the unrests in Iran are ignited and are starting, and it continued. How do you analyze it from outside? We are inside Iran. I just want to have your stance as a foreign observer to the events of, I'm sure that you are following the news about Iran and how the picture of Iran is being portrayed by mainstream media and also by social media, by the thousands and thousands of accounts on X, on Instagram, here and there, that are talking about Iran. Your take on that?
Well, I mean, it's very suspect that on social media, at least, all the pro-U.S. empire accounts suddenly is coming out to support the Iranian protests. It's all the Euro suspects, the same people who are also cheering the military operation in Venezuela at the same time. They're also cheering for the protests in Iran. These people don't really care about Iranians. They just care that this will create for chaos and create trouble for U.S. perceived enemies, in this case, Iran. Now, relating to what Ehsan said earlier, I actually don't think Iran is in immediate danger of being attacked anytime soon, because for the U.S., there's actual resource constraint on the U.S. empire as well. The U.S. attack on Venezuela, this was telegraphed long in advance. They have been gathering armada off the coast of Venezuela for the past, several months. And they have been planning this for a long time. We saw all these U.S. military hardware and assets gets moved into the region. Now, if they were going to do something similar, it's going to take them time to redeploy those assets back to Iran's neighborhood, right? And another country that's really interested to attack Iran, of course, is Israel. But Israel already blew their wad, so to speak, in their first initial attack during the 12 Days War. They have already exposed all their cells inside Iran, all their Israeli assets. They use it in one go. And, you know, it's going to take them a long time to rebuild up that network again. And so they simply don't have the capability at this point to launch another similar scale attack on Iran. This is why I think Iran is actually safe from another repeat of the 12-day war. This is why they're doubling effort in trying to inspire some kind of internal civil strife inside Iran. You know, doing regime change on the cheap, so to speak. But I don't see that have any chance of succeed. I mean, like, looks like the scale of unrest in Iran is not even at the same scale of the so-called Green Movement back in 2008. So this will peter out soon.
Ehsan, yesterday, Zalmay Khalilzad, you should know Zalmay Khalilzad, tweeted about Iran and Israel. I'm just reading his tweet. Iran and Israel appear to be heading to conflict. Will a war unify the Iranian people and their uprising, or will it create an opportunity to intensify their struggle and overthrow the government? The Islamic Republic has been a failure. The Iranians deserve much more. #USA. So what Zalmay Khalilzad says, he's claiming that the confrontation. I'm just forwarding it so that we may see the picture also of this tweet also. Muhammad, I have forwarded to you. You may show that on the screen as well. The tweet of Zalmay Khalilzad, 7th of June, 7 p.m. He believes that the war between Iran and Israel is inevitable. This is his first claim. Second, then he talks about the Iranian system. Is it going to be overthrown or not? And if a possible war on Iran will unify Iranians or not? That's the secondary question. I want to have you stand also, because we have a bunch of Israelis who are commenting and talking from their perspective to the Iranian masses and encouraging them to come to the streets, make the riots, make them as violent as possible. So we had Danny Danon yesterday also. He posted a video in UN subtitled with Persian, again inviting the Iranians to come to the streets. What's your take on that? You are in Shiraz. Do you really believe that the Iranians care about, this is the tweet of Zalmay Khalilzad, do you really believe that Iranians care about or listen or have any sort of sympathy or empathy with the Israelis or not?
Look, what these people don't understand is that we actually have a history. When you talk about countries like Iran, China, we have a history. Iran didn't start in 1776, 4th of July of 1776. When you talk to the Iranians, and this might seem a little bit arrogant and vain of the Iranians, but they always talk about, oh yeah, we had an empire 2,500 years ago, right? And in that sense, when an Iranian listens to a Chinese person or a Russian person, he understands the mindset and the mentality of them. President Putin gave an interview to Tucker Carlson, and he talked about history for 45 minutes. For 45 minutes. This is something that is completely out of question for the Western leaders. They can't do it, right? But we can do it in Iran, in Russia, in China, in Egypt, to a certain extent, because unfortunately there has been very strong propaganda campaign against Egypt, which has created problems, but still to this day, they have a very strong sense of nationalism and history and everything. Once Iran went through the 12-day war, the perception of the average Iranians and their outlook on the geopolitics changed drastically, very drastically. So Iran fought in Syria in order to aid the sitting government of Syria at the request of the said government. And Iran fought for like 12 years, 10 years, and we had 2,000 martyrs. Once Israel attacked Iran in a span of 12 days, 1,100 Iranian civilians were martyred. And this was something that was being brought up constantly in the conversation, dialogue, discourse between the Iranians. So they started understanding the reason why Iran actually gets involved in the fight against Israel. And the perception of the Iranians with regards to Israel changed. So now when you have the official account of Mossad in Farsi posting a tweet saying that we hail the efforts of the Iranians, we are with you, not just verbally and from afar, from the distance, but also in the battlefield, in the field itself, in the streets, we're with you. So this is the biggest admission of guilt. And then you have the Israeli experts day and night talking on different channels about how they are involved. Sima Shine, the former director of INSS at INSS study about Iran and the Shia axis, as it is called. Beni Sabti, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Yeah. He's also another expert. And
Beni Sabti, he is calling himself. Sabti, he is calling Beni Sabti. Yeah.
Former spokesperson of the Israeli regime, and the former UN representative of Israel to United Nations. They all have made statements, and these are very senior key figures making statements and talking about how they are involved in what is happening inside Iran. When you have that, and when you have this history that the Iranians have, it becomes really hard to fathom that anyone would actually buy into this notion that Israel is going to help Iran. And that actually creates the opposite effect. There are videos of different Iranians online, and these videos are going viral, that they are really seriously unhappy about the current situation, current economic situation, but they don't want to go out because their biggest concern is not the fact that they want to sustain their level of economic prosperity, but it's more so about the security of the country, right? And when you see the chasm that is created by these rioters, so for example, you have people breaking into other people's home and setting their cars on fire. The car in Iran called Pride, which is the lowest car, the cheapest car that you can basically purchase. So the person who actually purchases that is going through economic situation, the bad economic situation with you. I can understand, I'm not advocating violence, but I can understand if people go and set banks on fire, because then you can argue that, oh, they are torching the emblems of the bourgeoisie or the rich minority of the opulent that have destroyed Iran's economy. No, they're destroying a Peugeot 405, which is, again, another very cheap car that you can purchase. So these people whose property are being destroyed are average, ordinary Iranians who are going through the same economic situation with you, and you're trying to isolate them. But that's not the point. The point that Israel wants to make here, because Israel's hand is all over the place, is that we should take control of the cities near the big missile cities that Iran has, big missile military bases that Iran has. So they're following a different logic. But I have to say I have to add one final point here, that they still have a couple of tricks in their sleeves, as I mentioned before. Beni Sabti talked about how they have new plans for Iran, and I can see and I can speculate what those plans would be, but let's leave that to a conversation. Leave that conversation to some other time.
Okay. Carl, I'm going to ask you to watch this video. There is a video that got viral in Iran, video by an Iranian mother. I request you, it has been subtitled. I wonder if we can read the subtitle, Carl, or not. And there's a point I want to have your stance on that. Let's watch this video together.
داوکیلی خیلی گرونیه، یعنی اصلا اوضاع اقتصادی کشور افتضاحه، ولی یکی مثل من از ترس اینکه هموطنهای غیورمون نه کشور دو دستی تقدیم آمریکا اسرائیل کنن جرئت نمیکنم اعتراض کنم. صبح توی اکسپلور داشتم میچرخیدم، پست نفتالی بنت رو دیدم، بعد رفتم کامنت ها رو خوندم. یه پسر نوشته بود داداش بیا دیگه یخ کردیم تو خیابون. بچه بلند شو برو خونه‌تون. تو واقعا فکر میکنی اگر آمریکا اسرائیل بیان برای تو آبادی و آزادی ایجاد میکنن؟ تو تاریخ نخوندی؟ ندیدی که با عراق چه کار کرد؟ ندیدی تو افغانستان چه اتفاقاتی افتاد؟ اب نداره تاریخ نخوندی، حداقل از این گوشه تو دستت استفاده درست بکن. تو
So Carl, I mean, this, I wonder if you were able to read the subtitle. She speaks, she's a mother. She talks about a post by Naftali Bennett on social media, if I'm not wrong, on Instagram. Naftali Bennett posted and asked Iranians to come to the streets because he tried to push that propaganda against the Iranian people a lot. Naftali used his social media accounts a lot against Iranians. Then she says that you have to read the history and you have to see what took place to Iraq, what took place to Afghanistan. So there is that idea of separatism, that if Iran is going to be under a new round of attacks, one of the plans and the plots, I don't know if that was one of those scenarios that Ehsan was left that to talk it in another episode somewhere else, is encouraging the separatism. So we have now some sorts of movements in Sistan and Balochistan area, and you should know the Balochistan area because it's also very vital and strategic for the Chinese as well. It's the connection to the ocean for the Chinese CPEC project in Pakistan. And also we have the separatist movements in Kurdistan who are just today fighting against HTS in Aleppo. Still confrontations are going on there, even after all the surrender the Syrian regime did to Americans and to Israelis, even after signing all the normalization treaties. They are still fighting inside. The country has been torn apart. So the separatism, how do you find that possibly to take place? Do you think that separatism is something that the Americans and the Israelis are planning for a possible future of Iran, a separated Iran, a torn apart Iran actually?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, divide and conquer, right? That has always been the strategy for the empire. And this is why U.S. has always been advocating balkanizing what its perceived enemy, whether it's Russia or China or Iran. And they, the one line of separatism they're really interested in is ethnic or religious separatism, that they try to exploit the potential features in a society so they can do a regime change on the cheap. Once you break a big country like Iran, Russia, or China into smaller pieces, then it's a lot easier for the empire to deal with the remaining individual pieces than a cohesive, strong nation. So this is what I call, like, they try to do, the regime change on the cheap by sponsoring these separatism movement. But this is they're resorting to this right now. It's because they have real resource constraint to apply pressure directly on Iran. That right now they have all their eggs in the Caribbean, trying to pressure in Venezuela. So this is why they're trying to sponsoring domestic civil strife in Iran to create problems for the Iranian government. This reduces the need for them to engage directly. But I don't think this will succeed, because this is nothing that Iran hasn't seen before. United States have been supporting this separatism for decades now, and I'm sure Iran, Iranian government knows how to handle them.
Ehsan, your final point on this video and on the idea of separatism for Iran, separating Iran and turning apart Iran?
Well, they are really trying to push this separatism on Iran. You see posts referring to these individuals, these rioters who are armed, as National Kurdish Army. So they're now openly saying that Kurds are not Iranians. They are trying to sow division between different ethnic groups inside Iran, completely ignoring the facts that, so for example, the chief commander of the Iranian naval force, General Shahram Irani, is a Kurdish person, right? Iranian Kurdish civilian / official. But they're trying to basically close their eyes on that, because I think I do agree with your guest, Mr. Zah, that they know that they don't really have the potential or the capability to overthrow the Iranian government. But this is the thing about the Israelis. The fact that they can't do something doesn't mean that they're not going to try. And that's why you see that despite all the evidence point to the contrary, that there is not a big regime change in Iran, but people actually, push this narrative very strongly. So there's this account, this Iranian account that I suggest everyone should go and subscribe to. It's called Surah Underline Design 2. She's an Iranian woman talking about Iranian affairs. She does a very good job. She posted a video of Iranian people gathering in Isfahan, the city of Isfahan, and basically trying to show their support for the Iranian government and show their discontent about the riots. Someone used that video, and what he did was not that he would go and download the video. No, he used the option that Twitter gives you in order to embed the video rather than downloading it and re-uploading it. He embedded the video in another tweet, and he said, oh, this is the revolution, the Iranian revolution. And all you had to do was to go and click, because the name of the original author appears underneath the tweet that you have embedded their videos of. And basically all you had to do was click on her name and witness that the original author of the video has something 180 degrees different, the exact opposite of what the propagandist was trying to say. So in that sense, they're not going to stop, but the Iranian people will not bend the knee to the regime that carried out the genocide against the people of Palestine, has bombed Syria, Tunisia, Qatar, different countries in the region, and has killed 1,100 of their own compatriots and brethren. So it's not going to go anywhere.
Thank you, Carl Zaha, and thank you, Ehsan Safarnejad. Thank you for being with us. And again, I'm requesting you to subscribe the channel irantalks.podcast. And thanks for collaborating the video from the channel of Carl Zaha. We'll update you with the next episode soon. Thank you for being with us. Bye-bye.
Iran.